spell slinging skills. This is not going to be a good video. This is not going to be a structured video. This is hardly going to be a video. But I feel like I need to get all of my points out in a structured format instead of, like, occasionally ranting about it on my Tumblr, or, like, making a snide Reddit comment, or just, like, being in general despair. So I'm going to make this video. Here's my point. Wizard City sucks now. Now, I would like to believe that I have healthily integrated my nostalgia into my experience with this game and hopefully other aspects of my life. I would like to consider myself as someone who is knowledgeable about how stories work in all of their forms, who can understand how hard it is to keep a 17-year-long game coherent in terms of a narrative. And so, when I say this, I hope it doesn't come off as nostalgia blind. Wizard City sucks now. For the context of those who have joined us fairly recently, perhaps in 2020, when Wizard 101 had a massive revival, the original start of the game used to be very different. Now, the game still very much looks like it did back in ye old 2008, however, things have been touched up and polished over the years, and one of those major repolishes has been the original starting world, Wizard City. We got fancy new textures, fancy new player models, and a fancy new story. The new textures are lovely, the new player models are a marginal improvement, though I really wish they didn't chew on air. I also wish they emoted normally, because what the hell is this screenshot? But I can excuse weird visuals. This game is old as shit. If I wanted good visuals that would burn my graphics card, I would play Final Fantasy XIV more often. No, my issue comes with the new and improved, revamped storyline for Wizard City. Now, to say writing sensibilities have changed in the past 20-something-ish years would be an understatement. Research tragically shows that you have less time than ever to grab a reader or player's attention and keep it. And I recognize that the game's ability to survive hinges on it keeping up with the times and keeping up with current player sensibilities. I'm not deeming myself an expert on what should be done for the longevity of this game. I trust KingsIsle to keep this game alive. They've done it a majority of my life. Everything is chill. However, as a writer myself and as someone who cares way too much, I have some problems with this rewritten version of Wizard City, and I want to get into them. Part 2, The Death of Sincerity. Arc 4 had this problem. I would argue Arc 3 had a little bit of this problem. In general, around 2019, definitely 2020, Arc 4 in general, so recently, honestly, we have escaped this curse. Wizard 101's writing sensibilities and what they focused on had shifted. To be blunt and general and also a little bit soft on the matter, because I have made a 2-hour diatribe on Arc 4. The focus of the writing shifted from delivering a sincere, magical, whimsical, engaging narrative to post-irony, let's just say. Sarcasm, jabs, lampshading. The best way that I can describe it is almost this strange attempt to undercut itself before we as the audience could do it for them. It read to me as almost a fear that the audience had grown past the game too much, if that makes any sort of sense. I'm mainly speculating on that notion because I recognize that at this time, one of the big conversations about Wizard 101 was the fact that all of the children who played it were now adults. It was kind of congruent with the whole Wizard 101 COVID revival thing. That being said, there was definitely a shift in the writing. The main villain of the last world of Arc 4 was freaking Freddy Croker. I'm not joking. They made Freddy Krueger a frog and then made him a major villain. But Wizard City, it's very hard for me to give examples of the original quest line because it is no longer accessible in almost any form outside of dialogue boxes and whatever clips you can find going around online. But the original Wizard City and the original 2 arcs of the game were very, very sincere. The original Wizard City especially had this very strange fairy tale quality to it. And it was slower, objectively. I will admit that. It was much slower, and there was much more dialogue. It took its time, really, trying to immerse you in this world. And maybe in modern sensibilities, again, trying to give the rewrite a benefit of the doubt, this is too slow for the onboarding process. It might get in the way of trying to tutorialize new players because the start of Wizard 101 can be very confusing if you haven't been here, as everything has changed. I understand that. But I will make the argument that the original way that the storyline was written, both in theme, in quality, in tone, and the original pacing, contributed to the atmosphere and the texture of this world in the way that the new updated version of the story does not. I'm going to read you 2 lines of dialogue that are more or less saying the same thing. One from the original, one from the rewrite, and I want to just ask you which one to you feels more characterizing of the world and more inviting, just on a pure story level. So, our first dialogue. Apparently, evil forces are at work here in Wizard City. Some dark element has emerged despite Ambrose's attempts to keep us safe. Thank you for letting me know. I must alert the others. And then we have, what is clear is that some evil magic has emerged here, and we're going to need more than a handful of guards to stop it. Okay, so to be fair, again, I can see the pros and the cons for both. Taking off my nostalgia blinders, I can see some things wrong with the first one. It's a little overwrought. It's a little bit too much. It's not entirely necessary information if you really want to go that far. But, however small, however, late 2000s MMO it is, there's a consistent voice there. And that voice is lost, drained even, out of Saren in the rewrite. And honestly, I do think he is one of the characters that has been completely butchered. And don't worry, I have a list, but I think he's the first one that makes it glaringly obvious that, well, some dark element has emerged and sucked all the soul out of Wizard City. I will try to be brief, but I need you to understand what I'm talking about. Saren Nightchant is not that important of a character. Most likely, you are going to forget about him the second he leaves your peripheral vision. He is also, critically, your first introduction to what a student wizard is like. He is the first peer you meet in your new life as a student of Ravenwood Academy. So, you would think, by most narrative logic, he would become kind of important to get right, even if you're never going to see him again. And in the original, I think he does a pretty good job of being an example of what someone from Ravenwood is like. Objectively, he's not that characterized. You only see him for a couple quests. But in that time, he does a couple of pretty important jobs. For the sake of not making this video incredibly long, I'm going to go very fast with these bullet points, and if you want better sources, you're just going to have to read the original quest tree yourself. I will leave a link to that in the description. 1. Familiarity with the strange. Saren shows a remarkable awareness of the magical creatures on his street. He is very in tune with them, and he seems to know Lady Oriole on a personal level. He speaks of her not with this reverence that he has in the new version, where she's this powerful, mystical being, but Lady Oriole down the street. She runs the hedge maze. That's important to me in showing how wizards have integrated and how they interact with strange magical beings. They're not strange to them. They're a part of the world, a part of their life. 2. Field knowledge. That might be a little dramatic, but the general idea that I'm getting at here is, in the original, Saren wasn't entirely stupid. Sure, he was benched, it's an MMO, but he's not dumb. He understands what's happening, and he knows enough about the street, enough about his neighborhood, to help you. It's subtle, but it makes him come off as older, as someone more powerful than you, really, as he should be. Granted, of course you're the protagonist, of course you're the child of destiny or whatever, but you just got here. There is no reason that you should be more powerful than him at this stage. It doesn't make sense narratively, and it's not satisfying. There needs to be a time in the player character's life where they have peers who are stronger than them. The power creep is not satisfying in any direction if there is not a point where you are struggling up against someone who knows more than you. Granted, you're not in a heated rivalry against Saren Nightchant. That's for another dude. But you understand what I'm saying, right? This isn't crazy talk, right? This is crazy talk. Anyway, final point. He cares. He is worried about his street. This is not his problem. This is actually a problem with the rewrite in general. Welcome to part 3. Nobody gives a shit anymore. I talked about the death of sincerity in terms of the tone, but I want to talk about the death of sincerity in terms of the characters. There is a level of incompetency in the rewrite from the characters that is comical. We joke a lot in this fandom about Merle Ambrose being unethical, but I think the rewrite is not doing him any favors. Much of his lines were cut. Plot points were shifted around that make him look more negligible than he did before. 2 major examples. There is a point in both the rewrite and the original where Cyrus Drake sends you to get his laundry, and he gives you a note to give to the headmaster, where the headmaster reads it, and the assumption is that Cyrus put in a formal request to expel you. He greets you. Again, little moments like this have been mostly cut in the rewrite, but I do find it nice that he does say that it's good to see you. He reads the note, and then he says this. I will not expel you from the Ravenwood School of Magical Arts, regardless of what Professor Drake thinks of you. You are not responsible for the problems on Cyclops Lane. General Achilles and his men promised to drive out the trolls. Now Achilles has gone back on his word. I fear there is something more sinister behind Achilles' change of heart. This M is to blame. We will need to know more. Drake is of no use here, but you have been most helpful. Go back to Nolan Stormgate and help him straighten this out. This moment has always been very cathartic to me, ever since I was a child, and the rewrite handles it mainly the same, but it shifts the tone. The joke in the rewrite is that Cyrus Drake is trying to expel you on the grounds that you called the trolls revolting. And it's a pun, because the trolls are literally revolting. And if I can sound like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat for a minute, I think I know maybe why this scene was changed to be a joke. It's not cathartic. To a younger player, it is very cathartic to be believed over an adult that's, from your perspective, bullying you. As a child, you almost never have the full picture. Adults in your life are passing notes and talking about you in ways and in rooms you can't access. So for a younger player to have that scenario essentially played out in a very fast manner, and then have an adult turn to you and say, you're not doing anything wrong, that's the story in and of itself. But the rewrite wasn't designed for children. It was designed, probably, allegedly, for onboarding adult players getting a nostalgia fix. The other hit to Ambrose's character is more tactical. I could probably find more examples if I dig, but Nightside. In the original, the Death School had been thrown underneath the school grounds. In the rewrite, it's in hell, I think? I'm kind of unclear, but I'm pretty sure the implication is that the Death School was thrown literally into hell, which is metal. even if I think it is a little bit overdramatic. But it makes Ambrose's decision to leave it there for the time being or otherwise completely bonkers. Like, sure, is going to school underneath the school grounds when your school is in a little bit of disrepair from the plunge kind of demeaning and a little bit inconvenient? Definitely. But that's still like a fantasy world level of safe. In the context of high fantasy and whimsy, I'd believe that's a suitable arrangement for the time being or forever, because necromancers are a bunch of little dramatic goths. But the concept of the death school being in hell and Merle's reaction being, well, I guess we can resume classes now. No, sir! It's such a bonkers decision. I'm sorry for using the word bonkers so much, but that's it. It's just bonkers. They've kept the general structure, but they've exaggerated certain plot points like that, and it just doesn't read well. Oh god, this video is already 16 minutes long. I'm making these on my iPad. I need to learn how to mince my words. Part 4. This screws up Malister's character arc too. For being the main villain, we have no time with Malister whatsoever. Most of his development is crammed into, I think, like, the latter half of Dragonspire. We see him once in the tutorial, and then again, like, at the end of Marleybone, and then I think he maybe shows up in Mushu for a second, if I'm not misremembering, and then we fight him in Dragonspire. And that's it. Malister is a good man gone bad from grief. That is his character thesis. Now we have a small problem. Everyone in the rewrite that you talk to about Malister talks about how sinister and weird and off-putting he was. The one person who seems to still speak favorably of him has had his character driven into the ground with a stick, and then Selenopolis hit him in the face with a baseball bat. And then Miranda Breyer literally hits him in the face with her fist, probably. I think that's what happened. Unfortunately, he's thematically important. And also, can we please let him go? The bullying isn't funny anymore. It's just suspicious at this point. I have my biases, but I do believe that his character does something important for both Malister and for the general themes of Wizard 101. Maybe I'll make a video about his character one day. Probably not. I should leave that to the experts. I'll stick to what he does in the original version of Wizard City. In the original version of Wizard City, he was one of the loudest voices in support of Malister that told you what kind of man he really was. He was Malister's favorite student. Not his best student, that's distinctly Malorn. But Duncan was his favorite. And I don't know if that was an intentional writing choice, but I think it says so much about who Malister was as a person that the student he considered his favorite wasn't his best achieving. To me, the main theme of the original 3 arcs of Wizard 101 is your relationship with your mentors. How they affect you, what you carry of them, and the shortcomings that you notice that they have as you grow and mature. Even in the classic version of Wizard City, Duncan is portrayed as far from a perfect person. He's snobbish, self-absorbed, cocky, a little cruel, even at times. He doesn't seem to fully understand the danger that the city is in, and he refuses to believe that Malister is behind it. He's a child, just like a majority of the characters you meet in Wizard City. He is a child trying to make sense of a world that has flipped on its head, despite everyone's attempts to keep them all safe. And out of everything that I have nitpicked so far, and will probably continue to nitpick, I think this is what's really missing in the rewrite. We are missing the fact that this is a community in mourning. Malister Drake died with Sylvia. I feel like that's not a crazy thing for me to say. Wizard City lost 2 professors when Sylvia passed. And even if it's not explicit, it is that undercurrent of confusion and chaos and mourning that makes Malister's character arc work as a tragedy. That doesn't work when every other old lady on every other street is talking about how Sylvia was clearly too good for him, how there was never something right with that man. It should not be up to Penny Dreadful's side quest to characterize Malister as sympathetic. By turning Duncan into a Malister fanboy, by having other characters gossip about how something was never right with Malister, by having a bunch of throwaway lines where people very flippantly describe how he turned evil, you ruin maybe the one chance you really get to characterize Malister. Because again, we don't see him for pretty much the entirety of Arc 1. And if you're going to have a character that is absent like that from the narrative, you need to have pieces of the narrative that can speak on that character's behalf. I think Malister still works, but I think he worked better when Wizard City worked with him. Okay, Part 5, Lightning Round. Susie and Arthur's roles were swapped. They somehow unsubverted the damsel in distress trope. Right before you go to Crocotopia, Bartleby straight up tells you that he chose you. This completely ruins the surprise that the young wizard is the scion of Bartleby. Originally, it was ambiguous as to how you got here or what pulled you into the spiral. All you really knew was that Merle Ambrose cast a spell to find someone strong enough to save Wizard City. For some reason, characters who were not British before suddenly have British accents. I don't know why that happened. Firecat Alley is a nightmare realm. The story is just not good. I don't even want to get into why. Nolan Stormgate is somehow a worse person, which is almost impressive, but how did he get more insufferable? Roving Reporter was a cute side quest, and I'm sad it's not available anymore. Yes, I know the lore was technically inaccurate, but to be fair, we weren't talking to very reliable narrators in the first place. I think it should have stayed in. Originally, when you were being introduced to the Academy, you had to go around the Ravenwood Circle and talk to everyone in their classrooms. Now, they just stand outside and greet you one by one like you're the chosen one, which you technically are, but I still don't think you should have known that yet. And finally, it's more of a vibe, but there's no sense that you're staying here. In all, the original Wizard City tried to give you a sense that this was going to be your home base. It tried to welcome you as a student, as a friend, as someone who was going to be integrated into this world. New version knows it's an MMO and knows you won't be here longer than 3 hours. And considering a major plot point and pressure point in Arc 5 is how many worlds the wizard enters and leaves and never stays in, I think it's kind of sad that the world that they were welcomed to as their home isn't even written like that anymore. But, well, that's just my humble opinion. No matter what's become of the original start to the game, or what will become of the story in the future, I'm grateful I got to experience it in the time period that I did, and the version of the story that I did. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the spiral.